Okay, Warren.
Okay, let's get started. Take the roll call, please.
I see Sue Pullman, yourself, Ken Potter, Dan Ramsey. I know that Julie Urban and Jim Bachhuber won't be here. Assuming that Carolyn Berger will show up in a few minutes. But we do have a quorum. We have 4.
Okay, let's get started then with need a motion for approval of the minutes from August 18th.
So moved.
You have a second? I'll second it. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. The first item of business then is St. Bernard's Church stormwater.
Yeah,
Talk about it, please.
I'll give a brief. This is a small development to the entrance of the church from the parking lot. This is the church on the northeast corner of Parmenter and University. And Carl Jensen with Veer Becker is here to discuss a request for fees in lieu of stormwater. Carl, you should be able to unmute yourself and take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Like Eric said, I'm Carl Jensen with Veer Becker. The site we're disturbing about 7,800 square feet of property. It is all directly adjacent to the existing building and a new vestibule entrance from the parking lot. Trying to keep the scope of the project down as little as possible. And the area all sort of drains to this corner of the site. It's sort of a depression, self-enclosed depressional area of the parcel. Most of the parking lot actually drains to the northwest towards the roadway and the right of way, so it doesn't go towards the building. But again, like I said, the small space, and I know the city's dislike of underground infiltration, just we thought makes this site very applicable to a fee in lieu for stormwater management. We are providing what we can. It just does not meet the full city requirements for redevelopment.
Carl, maybe go over the performance deficits that you're coming up with, and I will find that page of the memo.
Yeah, it's the second page of the memo. I think probably the biggest one is the peak rate control for the site, where they're all very well draining A soils. So trying to get the reduction in the space available is a little bit difficult. We don't have a good storm sewer connection for the area either. It's shallow, so going underground with our detention isn't a possibility. And we are adding about, I think it's about 1,500 square feet of impervious to the site. So with that, our post-development rates are a little high. Both of our total suspended solids and infiltration and groundwater recharge, though, we are hitting at least 50% of what the city requires. I think was it TSS removal was a 40% required reduction, and we're at 25% with the use of a couple stormwater catch basins. And then as you can see here, the infiltration and groundwater recharge, and both at the infiltration is at a 45% requirement. We're at just under 39%. So there we are very close. And then the groundwater recharge, the city requirements state a 50% pre-development, and we're at 30. So again, just providing over half in the space in the project area, but again, just not hitting what the city has for the redevelopment requirements. But again, we did look at like a permeable pavement as well. Just in this type of use, we just don't feel is conducive to a church entrance with the gaps in the pavers and everything. We just want to keep that down to a very minimum, and just to the joints in the concrete. So I don't know if there's any other questions or anything.
So what are you proposing?
Just the green space, we will still have about 2,500 square feet of green space on the site. And there will be plantings in those areas, some swales. But yeah, we will have, like I said, green space is the big one for the infiltration and the groundwater recharge. And then, like I said, we will have catch basins for the TSS removal, and then some oversized pipe and a restrictor structure for the minimal amount of peak runoff control that we have proposed.
So you're proposing to do all these features, and then since you can't meet our standards, pay fees in lieu of for the rest?
To make up the difference, yes.
How much would that be, Eric, you know?
Carl has made the calculation. It's only about $2,800. I have recommended that you guys accept this, but I haven't had time to go through the calcs with a fine tooth comb, so the dollar value may change. And it would still go through Elliot Mergen's review too at the county.
But we could make a motion contingent upon you calculating the numbers after the design is all finalized.
Yes, that's what I asked for.
Yeah, that would be my motion, that we approve fees in lieu with the dollar amount to be determined when the calculations are finished by staff.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
About the permeable surfaces?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't there other permeable surfaces that aren't pavers that can be used? Is there a permeable, like a blacktop type of surface?
There are permeable, like a permeable asphalt or a permeable concrete. You do run into some of the same issues though with the voids in the spaces. And one of the, we've ran into this at other churches with the permeable pavers, where unfortunately you get this, one of the big things is women with high heels getting into the void spaces and twisting an ankle or I think I've heard of like breaking heels. That's the real concern of something like this. A permeable concrete would work real well if this was like a sports stadium where you have people walking around in their gym shoes. But try to stay away from that kind of improvement around around churches and other places where people are more than likely more in a little better dress.
Mhm.
Do you have any evidence that that is a problem? I mean, that surprises me a lot. Void spaces are not that big. You can hardly
They're
even tell.
not.
Wait a minute, let me finish, please. You can't even tell the difference visually between permeable pavement and permeable concrete and concrete. I'm surprised. That just sounds to me to be unlikely.
We've actually I've ran into it at a project northwest of Chicago.
So that's one
where
project,
we've had-
but they aren't, the ones I've seen done here in Wisconsin, that's not, you can't even tell the difference between permeable concrete and regular concrete. Stuff I've seen here in Madison, and it holds up really well. I guess that's a large area that you're expanding, and it seems to me that the reasoning is not very convincing to me.
Okay. Some of the areas we are, the whole thing is right next to buildings too, and I know usually you want to maintain all of your infiltration and underground water storage at least 10 feet off from the building. In this case, everything is so compact that there's no space left after you stay that 10 feet away.
You can uncompact soil, so that's not an issue.
Well, it's not the uncompaction of the soil. We're concerned with the ground, with the water influence on the foundation of the building.
Well, you could still do a good bit of it and not have to worry about that. I think there are ways around it. I don't think you've tried hard enough.
So what would you
Okay.
suggest, then to go back and see if they can't use permeable concrete and do better with infiltration requirements?
Mhm.
Would it just be the infiltration that you're looking at then, or would it be all of them too? Because like I said, our storm sewer is fairly shallow, that the only place where we can connect easily on the site. So trying to do any type of underground peak rate control would be very difficult.
Yeah, what I hear is just the infiltration is what we're concerned about.
Yeah, we're concerned.
Okay.
We're concerned about lake flooding and climate change. So I think you got to take another look at it.
And look at the infiltration can
Okay.
or the peak rate control too.
Mhm.
Well, we have a motion on there and there is no second right now.
Oh, I'll second. So, what was the motion?
It was to approve fees in lieu.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not gonna, I thought we were sending him back to recalculate, to refigure.
We're
So
talking
somebody will have
about,
to come up with a new motion.
Okay,
so there is no second for this motion. So
Let's
is there another motion, Sue, that you would like to make about sending back to refigure the infiltration?
yes, I think we should ask him to rethink about the other available permeable surfaces that can be used. So I move.
Is there
I
a
move
second for
so.
that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion then to send it back to recalculate and try and use some permeable surfaces. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, next item of business then is a Graber Pond.
Yeah, Jeff Fallon with MSA is here to talk briefly about some H&H work that he did on the new Graber outlet. Jeff, you can take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Good evening, everyone. As Eric mentioned, Graber Pond update. The memo that Eric has on the screen was sent to give a quick kind of pathway of from the beginning to where we are now, and then to present some modeling results from our latest efforts that were based on the Water Resource Management Committee's direction last June to set the overflow structure weir elevation at 904. And then also providing some recommendations on how we can move the project forward. So back before I was involved, it looks like in April of last year, there was an outlet elevation set at 902. And MSA proceeded to get into the construction plans for that. Subsequent to that effort, there was a change, and that 904 elevation became the new target overflow elevation for the structure. So that's what the latest round of modeling utilized for the pond. And just to give folks a reminder, the proposed outlet structure was an 8x8 foot box with a weir wall set at 904. And then that would discharge to an 18-inch pipe that would carry some of the flows down to the swale immediately upstream of the Misty Valley Road 30-inch diameter culvert. So the modeling scenarios that we've looked at here are presented in the table, and some show utilize the existing surface overflow elevation, the emergency overflow weir that's at 9051. And then there are some scenarios where we lower that down to 904.5. So you can see that the values don't vary tremendously if we have an 18-inch outlet pipe versus a 24-inch outlet pipe. The outlet pipe from this proposed structure is really not having much of an impact on the flood elevation of Graber Pond. Really what's happening, the single most effective way of reducing that 100-year flood elevation in the pond is lowering that surface overflow down to 904.5. But before we get too caught up in the minutia of these different values, overflow values and flood elevations, the overriding message to this latest analysis is that in any of the scenarios we've presented, while there may be some lowering of the Graber Pond 100-year elevation that can be achieved in varying degrees, all of these scenarios result in the flood elevations at the Misty Valley Drive culvert increasing. So the big message from MSA's standpoint here in recognizing that, as I understand it, the impetus for the project was to get the Graber Pond elevation lowered to prevent flooding at National Electrostatics in the southwest corner of the pond. That was the intent, but we're finding that we can't do that without creating issues at the Misty Valley Road culverts for the adjacent landowners. And so that's really the big message of today's update, is that in MSA's eyes, it's the path forward, or the prudent and recommended path forward would be to include the downstream areas of Misty Valley Road culverts and down through that Misty Valley subdivision stormwater management system, series of ponds in with this, to ensure that whatever's done to achieve a benefit at Graber Pond is not pushing a problem downstream to other folks. I'll reference, I believe, Eric, you had mentioned that you had conversations with concerned folks at Misty Valley Road. So it's not as, I guess, in our view, as simple as creating some freeboard for National Electrostatics, because, as I mentioned, we don't want to do that in a way that impacts negatively the Misty Valley Road households or condominiums adjacent to the culvert.
We do have a letter from maybe 3 dozen homeowners along Misty Valley and the Crane's Nest condominiums, which lie to the north of the drainage swale that runs between Graber and Misty Valley Road. Some of whom experienced flooding during 2018. And yes, they are concerned with the project and with kind of fixing the Graber outlet in general.
Well, this is a complex pond, and it's going to get more complex as Bell Farms develops. And I'm concerned what's going to happen with the inflow from Bell Farms with the increased impervious area there. Ken, do you have any indication of what's going to happen with, you've been working with those people?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know where they are right now.
And just to be clear, to follow up with Warren's concern, the current model we have is not accounting for any development at Bell Farm or Bell's Farm that you mentioned, Warren. So
Yeah.
that's a very valid concern, because we're already, I would argue, we're already facing challenges with getting water moved down through the system without putting properties at risk of flooding. And I guess I'll take this minute quickly to reference some information. I think there may be some, and I'll beg forgiveness or apologize, because I don't have my involvement in the project is fairly recent, so I can't speak to the history of concerns from parties of the waterway downstream of High Road. But I don't know if that's something that also needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I think it probably does. I think Herb Garn brought up some of those issues too in a letter he wrote to me and Eric.
Can I flesh something out a little bit, Warren?
Sure, go ahead, Eric.
So several months ago, when WRMC directed this 904.0, I thought, well, that's 1.5 feet below National Electrostatics. Maybe this can work. So I asked MSA to try to design an outlet that would once we get to our 904 elevation where we're going to be allowed to release water, that we can get the water out of there as quickly as possible and still give us some freeboard beneath electrostatics. So I think Jeff's model has a 140-foot long grassed overflow weir that's just set 6 inches above the outlet weir, and what we've got here is 3 inches of freeboard, and that's dependent on an earthen weir, which I think it's going to be 10 years from now as the vegetation built up. I don't think it's enough freeboard, kind of plain and simple. And I'm requesting that this kind of the whole system gets lowered, the outlet weir and the overflow weir by 9 inches.
Makes sense to me.
So what elevation would that be? The 902.5?
Maybe we could give the freedom to play with the outlet a little bit, just so long as we can say that we're maintaining a foot of freeboard beneath national electrostatics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? What do people think about extending the study down through Misty Valley and downstream of Misty Valley Road? I mean, the culvert being replaced and looking at the ponds and see how they work, and then looking at the flows as they go down stream towards the conservancy. Should the study be expanded to include that?
Yeah, it seems to me we should do that.
Yeah. And secondly, should we wait until we get more information from Bell Farms before we do too much more?
Yeah, I think that's another good idea. Otherwise, we'll be starting from scratch again.
Yeah. I'd like to see a Bell Farms do a rainfall runoff model, look at existing conditions, and then superimpose their development into the model and see if they are increasing or maintaining the same flows, or if there's any chance they may be able to decrease the flow somehow.
Yeah, I support that.
So how would we get back to Bell Farms and talk about that? I guess next time, are you talking to them, Eric?
They have been talking with planners and public works, about streets and things like that. I haven't seen any revised stormwater information yet. I'm surprised, I guess, Ken, that. So did you have like an introductory conversation with the developer, Ken?
I just tried to see what was there, so I didn't really have much conversation. I was just trying to understand what they were doing, but and that's quite a while ago. So I don't have any intuition on this at this point.
Okay.
Back in 2010, did Mars do a rainfall runoff model already for this site, or so?
Well, that was more of a water balance kind of thing, but
That's what you did, right? MSA, right? Did
no,
Mars-
MSA's model is like a TR55 model.
Right. But I think that Mars study you're referencing that's where that 902 kind of normal water elevation of Graber Pond came into play.
That's correct. And maybe, MSA's study is comparing all of these scenarios with the pond starting elevation at 902. So there is some storage capacity that's being used during these storm events. I'm not so sure. The DNR earlier this year set a ordinary high water mark of 904.16. And I think it's it's safe to say the better part of the last 4 years, the pond has probably been around 904 and or higher. It's certainly lower this year. So, I think Bell Farms aside, there will be more development in the future. And I think this, even if we can get Bell Farms to do the right thing, so to speak, we're still looking at more pressures in the future with additional volume of runoff coming at us into Graber Pond.
To add a little bit there to what Eric's line of thought is he mentioned the results shown in this memo, we're assuming that the beginning water elevation in Graber Pond was 902. If we set the model to start at 904 for a scenario that Eric's describing of what it may have been the last few years, or kind of a closer to worst case scenario, you're losing how many acre feet of bounce in Graber Pond for storage, and the flood elevation ends up going up. It's not shown in this table, but it goes up by a half a foot. So, if you want to talk about maybe not the worst scenario, but a worse scenario than starting at 902, starting at having the pond start up basically level with your low outlet, whatever that may be, in this case 904, you're potentially looking at a half a foot higher water surface elevation, which, if we look at this table now at option P4A, you go from having a half a foot of freeboard at National Electrostatics to all of a sudden being 3 inches underwater.
Could somebody remind me what the DNRs, where they're going to stand fast? How much flexibility are they giving us to go lower? And I know they don't want this to be treated as a detention pond. On the other hand, we got to be realistic about potential flooding down, in the future. We also have climate change issues. So, how do you feel about how strong their position is on what we do here?
I don't know that I have enough background in the dealings with DNR
Yeah, okay.
to
Who's the
address
contact
that.
there? I forget, do you know?
Wes Matthews is their waterway individual, and then Al Raminger has handled the
Okay.
wetland side of things. In the last, I think in the memo, we talk about a meeting. We were out there, Eric was out there, where they brought in their, and I've forgotten his name, their ordinary high water mark determination specialist, who is set that elevation at 904.16. So at that point, when we were working under the expectation that the overflow would be 904, the permitting standpoint was, well, you're going to have a little bit of wetland impacts above the ordinary high water mark where you're putting your structure in and shaping your berm. But those were anticipated as being, under a 10,000 square foot threshold. So it would be a general permit with no mitigation requirements. And then there would have to be, for any work out below that ordinary high water mark of 904.16 out in the pond, a waterway, chapter 30 waterway permit. So that was the kind of where we left off, what the permitting requirements would be. Now, I think Eric, hop in or correct me if I'm wrong. I think prior to that meeting, when this pond level was going from 902 or whatever the discussions were of what that elevation would be, I think there was a lot more discussion related to what, Ken, you're getting at, as what they might allow or not allow. And maybe Eric, you have some historical context for that.
I think back in the day, Ken, when I was working on this, the DNR was okay with what we were proposing. And when the Friends of Pheasant Branch started voicing their concerns about increased volume of discharge, is when the DNR permit folks started kind of balking at this.
Yeah, but you know, that's a major flooding risk on national electrostatics. And so we got to be, seems like we've got to get the DNR to realize what the issue is. As long as we're doing all the development is meeting DNR standards, then, but the outcome comes out such that it, is bothersome in terms of Graber Pond. That's kind of a catch-22 kind of thing, or whatever. And so I think we've got to go back to the DNR, and we know we're going to have future development too, and it's going to have some impact, right? Even if it follows all the rules, it's going to have some impact. And DNR is not going to restrict that development based on the pond, will they?
I don't think in that sense, no.
No, they can't, right? So, we got to be real here. We have ordinances, we're going to meet ordinances. We just got to find a way to make sure, we got a lot of balancing going on here. And
yeah, and remember I'm trying to get through budgeting a larger scale of project for Misty Valley, and I was hopeful that through that project, we could address some of the downstream concerns, and I'm still hopeful of that.
Yeah.
So it looks like we got three things that we should be looking at. Number one is talk to DNR and see what they'll allow us to do. Two is to expand the study down through Misty Valley and look at the Misty Valley Road and the culvert and then the downstream area. And the third thing is talk to Bell Farms about doing a rainfall runoff model. Mars did do a rainfall runoff model late last winter or early spring for some of the flow going into Graber's Pond. And of course, they did the rainfall runoff model for the whole Pheasant Branch watershed. So I don't know if Bell Farms of that development could contact anybody they want about doing the model.
Warren, are you talking about the study that Veerbecker is doing for the acreage on the other side of the Beltway? And now Mars is, or EOR now, is
Right.
currently reviewing Veerbecker's numbers to make sure that
Right.
doesn't.
That's right, Eric. They did the rainfall runoff model for the whole basin for after the 2018 flood to flood mapping, and then they expanded that to include the area that was going into Graber's Pond and diverting it towards Pheasant Branch instead of going into Graber's Pond. And so it would seem their model might have the detail that to expand that to include Graber Pond might be a logical step. But I'm not sure if other consulting firms could use it. I mean, it's owned by the city of Middleton too. So, but that'd be up to the developer of Bell Farms, right? How they want to do it. We just require them to do a rainfall runoff model and let them pursue that.
Well, and they would have to do that just as a part of the development approval, Warren, but then we'd need somebody to mesh that model in with a larger Graber model.
Yeah, I'm not sure what part of modeling they would do to meet our requirement right now. It seems like we should have a more detailed model, shouldn't we, with their type of development they're talking about?
I think eventually, sure, but this could take time before Bell Farms gets worked out. There have been, land development proposals out there before that haven't, made it to the finish line also.
Yeah, we've seen those. Tribeca for 10 years. So what are you saying, Eric? We should proceed with Graber Pond before we don't find out what's happening with Bell Farm?
Well, Bell Farm is gonna be a multi-year project if it comes to fruition, so we're probably going to have to look at the Graber Pond before, I mean, at some point before that's complete.
We could
Well,
ask,
Bell Farmer's already given us a preliminary plan, so we could use that, couldn't we?
well, we can, but I don't think Bruce Holler really had any detailed stormwater figured out yet. We could go back to a more flexible outlet for Graber Pond where we could, I had originally given Gary more of like a stop log structure, and then we could set the elevation based on future information, or we could wait.
So if we're gonna extend the study down to Misty Valley, what do we need, a cost estimate for the project from MSA?
You mean like a proposal?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would that be a logical next step, and talk to DNR and see what they'll allow us to do?
well, I'll have to develop a scope in concert with MSA, I guess, and then we can, or MSA can bring that back to you next meeting.
Because we'll need an amendment.
Yes,
Having a flexible weir, having an outlet structure that has range on it, it seems like a good idea. It's not that much more expensive, is it? To have an outlet structure that you can adjust.
no,
I wouldn't think so.
And then, then we can kind of see how Misty Valley goes, what they end up actually proposing and so on and so forth. So if we want to go ahead and get a structure out there, I just put a flexible one. That kind of pushes the decision later.
Yeah, yeah.
But at least, it gives you some, if something's happened, we're in the middle of some issue, at least we have some ability to adjust, right?
Well, that's what your first design was, right, Eric?
yes.
Right, and the Friends were opposed to that design. Herb's online, maybe you could tell us why you'd be opposed to that, Herb? Herb was there.
Just getting unmuted here.
Yeah.
What was that proposal? I missed that.
Well, when we're talking about the preceding one, outlet structure that was more flexible with a controlled outlet, the Friends expressed some concern about that because the increased volume of water that may occur. Is that correct? And we're talking
yeah.
about. We're talking about just going back to that kind of design.
Right, and that gets back to, increasing the frequency of releases to, that we were concerned about. But I can see some flexibility there, with working that in with the design and improving the design of the Misty Valley stormwater culverts also. So I think it's worth, looking at that and then seeing what adjustments would be beneficial. The one thing, I was wondering about is it seems like electrostatics would have to have some kind of flood proofing for themselves to give them more freeboard. So, there's some things that they should be doing to do the flood proofing because there's still going to be a risk of flooding there that can't be controlled just by adjusting the outlet of Graber Pond. So I think there's, you know, some responsibility there on their part also. And
That's probably up to them to decide they want to spend the money to do that or else bear the damages.
well, yeah, well, depends how, because they could still, you know, have a flood risk there no matter what the city does.
Well, we know that the 100-year flood doubled from 2001 up to 2020. So we're looking at the 100-year flood today, 10, 20 years out, it may well be twice as much.
Sure.
So maybe
Well,
they,
yeah,
think about that.
yeah.
They, you know, National Electrostatics does have, you know, permanently sandbagged this rear entrance. There's a dike. There's a couple of trash pumps, you know, sumped into this interior. You know, they've dammed it up and they're pumping over the berm to keep the water out. I'm sure it has not been a problem for them this current year, but it was for the prior 3 years.
The other thing I was wondering about to try to reduce flooding is, you know, there may be some way to not have a maximum discharge, but try to release the water over more time, which might increase, you know, the flooding duration for electrostatics, but it would reduce the flooding downstream if that water was released more slowly and over time. So there's a duration factor there to look at also to see, you know, what's feasible as far as controlling the rate of release to avoid downstream flooding.
All right, so let me flesh that out a little more. So the way Jeff's got this set up, we've only got storage between 904 and 904.5. It's about 10 acre feet. I think Jeff's 100-year inflow into Graber Pond's about 110 acre feet. So you can't attenuate that flow with 10 acre feet of storage. If we were to lower the normal pool of Graber to 902, then you end up with maybe 40 acre feet of storage that we could use for detention and attenuation. We could do some damage. Then we could attenuate those peak flows, you know, by half, I bet.
The other thing, and I don't want to get too out of the box or off the discussion, is there potential in the Misty Valley ponds downstream of Misty Valley Road to retrofit or change some of the configurations there to get more available storage capacity to attenuate flows downstream of High Road, so you could get more water out of Graber Pond to address national electrostatics. You add conveyance capacity through Misty Valley Road to get it through there to hopefully minimize impacts or risks to those adjacent homes. And then where you get some volume and attenuation achieved is by retrofitting some of those ponds in the Misty Valley subdivision before it goes out High Road. Because I think there's, if memory serves me correct, there's a lot more available freeboard in those ponds in the adjacent homes than at either Graber or the homes adjacent to Misty Valley. So that could be another spot where we gather or gain some storage in addition to potentially lowering the outflow of, or the permanent pool elevation of Graber, as Eric mentioned.
Well, I would suggest when we look at a scope of work to extend for MSA, that would be included.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we right now then? We're looking at you doing a scope of work, Eric? And I think we're probably comfortable having to pull down at 902 or 902.5 instead of 904. And then someone checking with DNR to see what they'll allow us to do.
Okay,
Do we need a motion for that?
yes, I think you do.
Okay, I just made a motion.
Second.
You want to make an amendment to Eric?
Well, so the motion is for me to ask MSA for an amendment to scope to study further downstream and come back with a price next month.
Right.
Okay,
And that includes looking at the ponds in Misty Valley, replacing the culvert, and maybe some casual look downstream of Misty Valley Road to see if there's any problems.
okay.
Now, Eric, if I could, I have a question that did we not already look at some of these things? MSC has been looking at it for over 2 years now, right?
That's correct.
I'm just curious what we did look at and what we didn't. Just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, some of this stuff has been looked at, Mayor. In fact, some of those documents were essentially ready to go. Things have changed a little bit with Bell Farms. I think MSA was redirected earlier this year to kind of switch gears and use this new higher elevation. There's no longer would be any attenuation in Graber Pond. So if we want to go back to the way things were, their amendment, and Jeff, I don't know, but it may not be that pricey, but that's not for me to say at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
Second.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion's carried then. In addition, Eric, if you talk to the Bell Farms developer, you should mention that we're going to require them to do a rainfall runoff model, a detailed one, to see what the impact would be on Graber Pond.
Yes, sir.
We do have some fees in lieu of money if there are some potentials for decreasing inflow to Graber Pond.
Yeah.
We might be able to use it in this case. It might be a good area to use it.
Good point.
There are, and last month, and I apologize, I don't remember if this was at the SWUB or the WRMC meeting, the question of fees in lieu came up, and I think I gave you a bad number. I think there's about $450,000 of fees in lieu.
Yeah,
That's what it's for.
that's a good number. Yeah.
That's where we got it.
Okay, anything else?
Adjourn, I guess, Warren.
Okay, need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
folks.
Good night.
Night.
Night.